This is the second recording of my learner, this time who is in grade 5.
Rice terraces of the Philippines Cordilleras, outstanding universe value. The rice terraces of the Philippine Cordilleras are an outstanding example of a developed living cultural landscape. They can be traced as far as 2 millennia ago in the pre-colonial Philippines. They are found in the remote areas of the Philippines Cordillera mountain range on the northern island of Luzon, Philippine archipelago. These historic areas cover an extensive area. The property consists of 5 clusters of the most intact and impressive terraces located in 4 municipalities. They are all products of the Ifugao ethnic group, a minority community that has lived on these mountains for thousands of years. The 5 clusters are 1. The Nagakadan clusters in the municipality of Kaingan into distinct rows of terraces divided by a river to the Hangdu and Torres cluster shaped like a spider web tree. The central Mayoyaw terrace clusters characterized by terraces in intervals with the traditional bale house and along granaries for the Bangaan terrace clusters. In Banao, the background of a typical Ifugao balayag, and 5. The battered terrace cluster of Banao that lies in semicircular terrace with a valley in its base. The Ifugao rice terraces are an ideal example of a living cultural landscape of beauty beyond compare. The Ifugao rice terraces are valuable contribution of our ancestral tarps and making. They were built 2,000 years ago and passed on throughout generations, and an example of an ancient civilization that overcame challenges faced by modernization, built on steeper slopes of high mountains, and the careful carving of the natural shapes of the hills. The Ifugao rice terraces have complex irrigation systems. Water comes from the forests of the mountain tops. The mountains of the living rice terrace show that, that the whole community works as on. It is based on the knowledge of the rich variety of biological resources which exist in the Ifugao agri-ecosystem. Rice terraces of the Philippines Cordilleras.
The learner added "s" at the end and mispronounced Philippine as Philippines. The learner mispronounced the word Cordilleras and said Cordilleras.
Outstanding universe value.
The learner mispronounced the word outstanding and said outstanding. The learner mispronounced the word universal and said universe.
The rice terraces of the Philippine Cordilleras.
The learner mispronounced the word Philippine and said Philippine.
Are an outstanding example of a developed.
The learner mispronounced the word developed and said developed.
Living cultural landscape.
The learner mispronounced the word cultural and said cultural.
They can be traced as far as 2 millennia ago.
The learner mispronounced the word millennia and said millennia.
In the pre-colonial Philippines.
The learner mispronounced the word pre-colonial and said pre-colonial.
They are found in the remote areas of the Philippines.
The learner mispronounced the word Philippines and said Philippines.
Cordillera mountain range on the northern island of.
The learner mispronounced the word northern and said northern. The learner mispronounced the word island and said Iceland.
Rice on Philippine archipelago.
The learner mispronounced the word Philippine and said Philippine. The learner repeated the first syllable of the word archipelago and then mispronounced it as archipelago.
This historic terrace.
The learner mispronounced the word terraces and said terraces.
Yes, cover an extensive area.
At the first attempt, the learner mispronounced the word area and said ari, but in her second attempt, she was able to pronounce it correctly.
The property consists of.
The learner mispronounced consists and said consisted.
5 clusters of.
Actually, the learner mispronounced the word clusters as clus, but at her second try, she was able to pronounce it correctly.
The most intact and impressive terrace located.
The learner mispronounced the word intact and said intact. The learner mispronounced the word terraces and said terires. The learner mispronounced the word located and said located.
For municipalities, they are all products of the Ifugao.
The learner mispronounced the word products and said products.
Ethnic group, a minority community that.
The learner mispronounced the word minority and said minocrity.
Has lived.
The learner mispronounced the word lived as lib.
On these mountains for thousands of years. The 5 closed clusters, A1, R1, the Nagakadandari clusters.
At her first attempt, the learner mispronounced the word clusters as claws, but in her second attempt, she was able to correct herself and pronounce it correctly. At her first attempt, she mispronounced the word R as A, but in her second try, she was able to pronounce it correctly. She repeated the first and second syllable of the word Nagakadan 2 times. She also mispronounced the word terraces as terror.
In the municipality of Kaingan.
She repeated the last 3 syllables of the word municipality 2 times and mispronounced the word Kiangan as Kaingan.
And into this kibros of terrace divided by a river.
She mispronounced the word distinctive as distintive. She omitted the plural inflection in the word terraces and the suffix of the word divided.
To the hangdu and terrace clusters.
The learner mispronounced the word Hongduan repeatedly. In her first try, she said Hong. In her second try, she said Hangduan. She mispronounced the word terrace as torres, as well as the word cluster as cluster.
Like a spider web tree. The central mayoyaw terrace.
She repeated the may in the word mayoyaw 2 times. She also mispronounced the word terrace as teres.
Clusters. Characteries.
She added as in the word cluster, as well as mispronounced the word characterized repeatedly. In her first try, she said character. In the second try, she said characteris. In her third try, she said characteris.
By terraces in intervals.
Initially, the learner mispronounced the word terraces as taris, but in her second attempt, she was able to pronounce it correctly. She also omitted the word in.
With the traditional bale house.
The learner mispronounced the word bale as bale. She also omitted the s in the word house.
And along granaries.
She repeated the first syllable in the word alang. She also mispronounced the granaries in her first try as grace. But in her second try, she was able to pronounce it correctly.
For the bangaan taris clusters. In Banao, the background.
The learner repeated the first syllable in the word bangaan 2 times. She mispronounced the word teres as tares. She also mispronounced the word cluster repeatedly. In her first try, she said class. In her second try, she said clues. In her third try, she said calasters. In addition, she also mispronounced the word banawe as banao.
Of a typical Ipugaw, Balag, and
The learner mispronounced the word typical. In her first try, she said type. In her second try, she said typical. She also mispronounced the word village as bailiag.
the battered terrace cluster of Banao.
The learner mispronounced the word banawe as banao.
That leads in semicircular terrace with
The learner mispronounced the word lice as lis. She also mispronounced the word semicircular as semicircular. She repeated the first syllable in the word terraces and omitted the s at the end.
A village in its base.
She mispronounced the word village as villi and substituted the word at with the word in.
The Ifugao rice terraces are an ideal example.
The learner mispronounced the word terraces as terraces. The learner substituted the word in for the word an. She also mispronounced the word ideal as idil.
Example of a living cultural landscape.
For the second time, the learner mispronounced the word cultural. In her first try, she said kultula. In her second try, she said kultural. She also mispronounced the word landscape as landscape.
Of beauty beyond compare.
The learner mispronounced the word beyond as beyond.
The Ifugao rice terraces are valuable contribution of our ancestral tarps and making.
The learner omitted the s in the word terraces. She mispronounced the word valuable as value. She also mispronounced the word contributions as contribution. In addition, she mispronounced the word ancestors as ancestratarps. She substituted the word end for the word to. Lastly, she mispronounced the word mankind as makind.
They were built 2,000 years ago
She mispronounced the word built as bolt.
and faced on throughout generation and
The learner mispronounced the word past as space. She also mispronounced the word through as trout. She mispronounced the word generations as generation.
example of an ancient civilization
The learner mispronounced the word ancient as accent.
that overcame challenge faced by modernization.
The learner mispronounced the word challenges as challenge. She also mispronounced the word past for the second time as pace.
Built on steeper slopes of high mountain.
For the second time, she mispronounced the word built. This time she said bout. She mispronounced the word steeper as staffer. She also mispronounced the word slopes as slaps. In addition, she also mispronounced the word high as height.
And the careful carving of the natural shapes of the hills.
The learner mispronounced the word natural as natural.
The Ifugao rice terraces have
The learner mispronounced the word terraces as terrace.
complex irrigation systems. Water comes from the forests of the mountain tops.
The learner added a s in the word mountain and pronounced it as mountains.
The mountains of the living rice terrace show.
The learner substituted the word mountains for the word maintenance. She also mispronounced the word terraces as terrace.
So that the whole community works as own.
The learner omitted the s in the word shows. The learner repeated that the 2 times. She also mispronounced the word whole as wool. She also substituted the word own for the word one.
It is based on the knowledge of
The learner mispronounced the word knowledge as knowledge.
the rich variety of biological resources which
The learner mispronounced the word variety as verity. She also mispronounced the word biological as biological. The learner omitted s in the word resource.
exists in the Ifugao agri-ecosystem.
She repeated the third syllable of the word ecosystem twice.